I want to return to that paper I mentioned at the top of the show, released recently by the Australian Strategic Policy Institute, we often call it ASPI in Canberra. It's called Countering China's Coercive Diplomacy. The report outlines Australia's the most targeted country in the world, bullied and coerced by China. But this is where we should be proud. Successive actions from Australian government standing up to Beijing have meant China's not been successful in changing Australia's policy, demonstrating instead our resilience and resolve. Well, long may that continue. And standing up to China has certainly been noticed. Last night in Europe, Ursula von der Leyen, the head of the European Commission, warned member states there they've got to alter their relationship with China or they'll risk becoming a victim of the same economic coercion as we've been. Joining me now, Senior Analyst at ASPI, Malcolm Davis. Malcolm, thank you as always. This report's fascinating reading. Tell us some other findings.
Look, I think what it does is demonstrate how active the Chinese Communist Party is, including their United Front sections of their community, in terms of promoting China's interests and trying to shape the public debate here in Australia on China, on issues such as Taiwan, the South China Sea, and generally shape the views and the opinions of key decision makers in politics, in academia, and in business, because ultimately what they're doing is using sharp power, the combination of soft power, influence operations, political warfare, and the threat of more kinetic means, military force, to ultimately try and intimidate us into accommodating Chinese interests.
Remember when they put those 14 demands on the table, most of them we said absolutely not, we're not going to become a vassal state of China, but one of those demands was take more Chinese students. Now, I'm all for students coming to Australia, and I think even if they're not sure about Australia's place in the world, hopefully when they're here we can inculcate them with democracy and all the good things we have in the West. But how much of a concern is it that China wants the students here and they're coming in droves? Are we confident that they are not in the universities, perhaps, signing up to a wrong message or themselves being vulnerable to all these players, you mentioned the United Front and others, who want to turn Australian Chinese citizens against Australia?
Well, look, I think it's very interesting that you had a report out a few years ago by ASPI called Picking Flowers, Making Honey, which highlighted the fact that the PLA was sending active duty military officers to pose as PhD students in Australian universities. There are about 200 such officers in Australian universities doing militarily relevant research in those universities. The same thing can be said for undergraduates, in the sense of you have undergraduates being sent to Australia from China. A lot of them obviously are seeking a genuine educational experience. Some of them probably would be working for United Front. We simply don't know.
All right, talk to me about Taiwan. The president arrived in New York overnight, very much signalling, the relationship with Taiwan and the US at a critical time. But she's copped a swift reaction from Beijing. They've labelled the trip a serious provocation. Beijing has vowed to fight back. Give us your sense of the timing, both the timing of the visit, Malcolm, but the seriousness of these threats.
Look, I think the key thing is, will she meet the Speaker, Kevin McCarthy, in California? If she does that, then China is going to exploit that for its benefit, and it's going to utilise that in the same way that it did with Nancy Pelosi last year. So you would expect China then to react quite aggressively with potential sort of military exercises in the same way they did with Pelosi. Clearly, the Chinese government arranged for mass demonstrations to occur outside Tsai Ing-wen's hotel in New York. They're trying to intimidate the Americans. They're trying to intimidate Wen. It's not going to work. The Taiwanese will stand up firm against the Chinese.
Malcolm, thank you.